Hola, hola, hola. Bienvenidos a Love Live Rocking Podcast. Welcome to the Love Live Rocking Podcast, or you might call it Love Live Rocking, because I chose that word on purpose. It's about life and it's about live music because it is the world to me. Going to a rock show is a transformative experience that fills my life with joy, with the joy of being alive, with the experience of meeting new people, with sharing this common bond of loving the same music that touches our soul, feeds our brain, and gives us the energy to live a day to the fullest. And I am being a passionate fan of rock music for as long as I can remember. As you might have heard, I began by saying hola, which means hello in Spanish. That is my first language. Spanish is the first language to me, is the language of my heart. I can only count money in Spanish. When I get upset or emotional, the first things that come to mind are words in Spanish. However, I've lived 19 years in the United States and I have to speak English every single day. Ever since I remember, I have loved rock music. I began learning English because of my love of rock music. I didn't want to learn English because it was a life goal or I had an expectation or an aspiration to move to the US. That was not part of my life plan. However, I did want to sing along to the music that I loved, the music that I loved for as far as I remember, the music that my father shared with me, and the music that allows me to remember him 20 something years after he passed. Yes, 20 something years. I don't know how many. I don't know the exact date of his death. I was there for the funeral. It's just that it's such a traumatic event. I do not remember the year. I've committed to memory a few times, but then it slips away because it doesn't matter. The date doesn't matter. The date is a sad date. What matters is how he lived and what he did while he was alive was share all the love that he had for rock music. I'm going to tell you all about it in future episodes. I want to tell you all about me because if you're listening now, most likely there's one reason is that I've asked you to listen because I want to get your story as well. I've asked you to come and join me for a conversation about love, about life, about the love for life, and about the love of live music. So, as I ask you questions about your own life, I'm committed to doing the same, sharing about my own life and telling you anything that you might need to know about my personal journey so that you know what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is build connection between us in a conversation that centers about the love of live music, but it can take you and take us in any direction that we might want to, because live music is the way that we might have met each other, is the way that we might deeply connect through the shared experience of being at a concert. You may be the one performing, I'm in the audience, we both may be in the audience, however it happened. I'm never going to be performing, I'm no musician, but that's another topic for a different day. However, I want to tell you, I absolutely love live music. And just a few months ago, I was struggling with one of the harshest periods of depression in my life. After 19 years living in the United States, I've always committed myself to doing whatever I could to return to my home country, Guatemala. I've committed every financial resource that I had, all the access to credit that I've had in the United States. I've fully committed that to investing in my country, trying to bring myself and my family back there. All those plans failed, crumble after 5 years of investing and some successes, some hard learned lessons, and some major setbacks. I had to put a stop on that dream. Let's call it a pause. But for now, it's a temporary stop where I don't know when it's going to continue going on. However, as I was dealing with depression, with handling the frustration of life, of failing, connected to having been in lockdown for so many months and not being able to share and go outside and live our lives in the most normal way possible, even as restrictions began to ease, first having to go to work wearing a mask, then going to some places where you are told to wear a mask, then finding that some people are upset if you wear a mask, and all that conflict that arose in the last couple of years, I found only one source of joy, of positive energy, and that was live music. I want to tell you all about it. I live in the Dallas area. I go to shows mostly in the Dallas area, but music has no boundaries. I was living in a Latin American country for 25 years, not ever coming to the United States, and I thought I knew all that I needed to know about this beautiful country based on the music that came from here, also from Britain, also from Australia, from any English language band that I could. And I'm thinking about the Netherlands, Van Halen. I'm thinking about Tanzania, where Freddie Mercury was born. The love of music creates an opportunity to learn and grow. And that's what I want to share with you. But let's start at the beginning. My name is Elvis Wilmer. Elvis is my legal first name, it's in my documents. My name, the one I go for, is Wilmer. Why? Because ever since I was a little kid, when people read the full name, usually at schools, and they said Elvis Wilmer when they taking attendance the first day, people would remember that name. it stands out, is the name of Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. I was always asked, "Do you sing? Do you dance?" I do neither. And when I try to dance, I'm horrible. And when I try to sing, even my children make fun of my lack of pitch. So that's been my life ever since people knew that my name was Elvis. I always hated the name. So I'm known by Wilmer. However, the reason my name is Elvis is because my father had a big admiration for him. My father and mother had agreed that when I was going to be registered in the Guatemalan Civil Registry, I would only have one name, Wilmer. However, the way my father has told me the story, or told me the story when he was alive, is that going to the civil registry, taking a public transportation bus, there were some songs by Elvis playing in the radio in the bus. He found that a little bit odd. You might find odd that people were playing the radio on the bus. Well, that's life in Latin America, guys. If you ever take a public bus in Latin America, you're going to hear the favorite radio station of the driver. But that's a different topic. I'm always going to touch on Latin America and my experiences growing there because that's my story. That's what I knew. That's what I remember. But as my father was taking that bus, he remembers hearing those songs. Now, think of the year 1975. I was born in 1975. I'm 47 years old now. Elvis Presley had not died. As a matter of fact, by then, he was a little bit not very popular. His comeback special from 68 was 7 years prior. Back then, 7 years was an eternity. He had not yet died, and all that popularity that celebrities gain once they die, sadly, had not yet, reached fever pitch. So in 1975, my father, by accident, serendipity, or divine intervention, was listening to Elvis Presley songs headed to the civil registry and decided to name me Elvis. With time, I began to appreciate his music. I would say that the first time I appreciated Elvis Presley's music was in 1991 with the soundtrack to a movie called Honeymoon in Vegas, where some of his most famous songs were sung by other artists like Billy Joel, and Bono sings a song, and also who was then my favorite artist, Amy Grant sings a song, Love Me Tender, which is also a song that I discovered through the movie Wild at Heart. I remember hearing Nicolas Cage singing that song to Laura Dern. I don't remember the characters' names, but those were the actors. And I love the song. And when I discovered that was an Elvis Presley song, I was conflicted because I had decided that I hated Elvis because of my name, but I love the song. And then I discovered the soundtrack and I loved every song. And, it was a long process. But going back again to the start, after I was named Elvis, growing up in Latin America, I grew up surrounded by the music of both my parents and my neighbors. Most of them listened to Spanish speaking music, music in Spanish language, whether it was salsa, merengue, some Latin rock, some Mexican pop, some rancheras, a lot of diversity, all in Spanish. There was only one source of music in English for me, the records that my father owned. I remember four of them in particular. Paranoid by Black Sabbath, with a silly cover that confused me because I did not know what Paranoid was. And when I looked at the cover, I didn't know any better. Led Zeppelin 4, which also confused me because poor man, those sticks are going to break his back. Grand Funk Railroad, We're an American Band, and a magnificent magic cover of a spaceship with a city on top. The spaceship happened to be an inverted guitar. And in the cover, you could see three of those, whether flying into an exploding Earth or flying away. I thought they were flying into because the guitars were pointed at the exploding Earth. But that album was Boston, the debut album by the band Boston. I remember looking at that cover, fascinated about what it meant. As a matter of fact, I kept trying and dreaming about owning a magnifying glass so that I could look into the two other guitars and see what cities were there because I imagined this was a scene from the future. Think of it, I was a 7 year old. I didn't know this was the fact that it was painted meant that it wasn't reality. I thought that somebody had painted it because somebody had seen it and that somebody was from the future and knew how the world was going to end. And we would be all escaping in each of our cities on top of a flying guitar. I was blown away by that cover art. I still dream of looking at at the cover one time and finding the name of my city. That's not going to happen. You might find the name of the city of Dallas once, sometime soon, because of a wonderful group of friends. I can call them now friends because I met them in person who are putting together a special project, but more about that later. However, looking at the cover of the album Boston, I was blown away. And when I grabbed that album and began playing it, And the song, the guitar sound of Tom Schultz and the song More Than a Feeling began playing. It was something out of this world. The only reference that I had to the band was the picture in the back, but I didn't focus on them. They looked like regular guys. Yeah, big hair, but nothing special. There was a lot of text in the back of the album. I could not understand any of it. I didn't speak English. I was a very fluent reader at age 7, but only read Spanish. My father, who did not become a fluent English speaker ever in his life, but he knew a lot of English through his love of rock music, told me, more than a feeling. Más que un sentimiento. Each of those words he translated for me. And those 4 words were the first 4 words I ever learned in the English language. More than a feeling. The title of a song by Boston. And that stuck with me because from then I was just taken by the sound of rock guitars, by the production. There's a song called Rock&Roll Band in that album that tells the story of this just another band out of Boston. Well, Boston itself, the band, was a studio project by Tom Schultz. I'll learn that later. They were never really a touring band. They never played clubs. He just produced the whole thing on record. But the song that stuck with me was More Than a Feeling. The sounds. I still listen to that song and it's hard for me to not to tear up. Not because of the song itself, which is incredible. I absolutely love the sound and the song and the lyrics. But it connects me to a time in my life that is long gone. And yet in my mind, in my heart, is always present. Is going back to being a 7-year-old boy holding a plastic cardboard or a piece of cardboard with a plastic record inside. I didn't know the word vinyl. I didn't know what that meant. I still don't know what it is. It's just a kind of plastic. But holding that, I felt I held the world, a world of joy. I felt I held the most magical present you could ever have. And that story kept repeating itself record after record throughout the years of my life, and it still does. I have a 6-year-old boy son now. My father died 20 something years ago. I believe it was 21, maybe 22, maybe 20. I honestly don't remember. Could have died. I know it was either 99, 2000, or 2001 when my dad passed. I know it was December. I always think it was between the 7th and the 9th. I know it was in the 7th because there's a special celebration in my country that he did not die on that day. So he died either the 8th or the 9th. But my 6-year-old son, who will never meet him, who even has a hard time looking at him at picture because I don't have any pictures with my father. Remember back then, you would take a picture and then you probably have to wait a month to see them. And best you could hope for was 24 pictures that you didn't know how they look at the time. And if somebody went to develop them and somebody picked them up, then you have to see those people to be able to see the pictures. It was hard. But the bottom of the story is that I don't have any picture along with my father other than the ones that we had when I was probably 1 year old. The last pictures I have of me with my father, I believe I was 11 years old. He lived for 14 more years, but we didn't take pictures. For the last 5 years of our lives, of his life, we didn't speak to each other. I'll tell you more about that later. It's a decision that I've always regret, a decision that I always carry as a burden in my heart about what my anger and bitterness of a teenage boy made trying to impose life decision on on my father, on an older man. But the what I'm trying to tell you is I stopped talking to him for 5 years. He died about 20 years ago. My son is 6 years old and he'll never meet him. He doesn't even have the chance to look at pictures of the last 15 years of his life. However, when More Than a Feeling begins playing on any of our speakers at home or in the car, my 6-year-old son says, "That's your daddy's song." And that is what I love about music. My son, the youngest one, can connect to the memory, to the representation, to the idea of who his grandfather was through one song. He doesn't know the lyrics yet, but he hears the guitar playing, the instrumentation, and he connects. That is what I love about music. Connection between people in different countries, between people all over the world, between people who speak different languages, between people who might like different music styles. But for one moment, through one song, through one band, through one album, through one concert, through one era, may be connected to each other. For me, as a Latin American, Guatemalan, living in the United States in Texas, I know there's a lot of people of Hispanic descent here. But one of the hardest things in connecting with them is the music that we love. A lot of the people who have Hispanic heritage living in Texas are connected to the roots with Spanish language music. And when I begin talking about the music that I grew up with, there's nothing to share. So for the last 19 years, between 2002 and 2021, I have made less friends than the amount of people that I've met in the 8 months since I began connecting to the local tribute scene in Dallas. And that is the reason I'm making this podcast. Yes, I told you that I face a major depression crisis, which I still believe I'm struggling with. I'm fighting it. There's days that, believe me, it's February 27th today. I began with the idea of this podcast episode. I reached out to some of the wonderful people that you'll hear in the next few months. About 6 weeks ago, we began recording 5 weeks ago. I've recorded a few of interviews, half a dozen of them already. Haven't been able to put it all out because sometimes depression hits and I cannot do anything. I am immobilized. I'm in this mood that I don't want to talk about now because this is the first episode talking about the reason for this podcast. The reason for this podcast is the connection and the joy of live music. And I was telling you that in the last 8 months, I've been able to connect with people in the local tribute scene. This podcast seeks to be a tribute to the tribute bands. What is a tribute? From the dictionary, the definition, a tribute is to pay tribute, to offer honor and respect to something you admire. That's what tribute bands do. They pay their respects, they honor something they admire, the music of a specific band or era or genre. I want to pay tribute to those bands, to the tribute bands that have transformed my life ever since I first went to a tribute show in May of 2021. Before then, we had a long lockdown. In the year of 2020, as my oldest son was 11 and I had a 10-year-old and 8-year-old daughter, we sat down, I believe in January, and we created a list of all the concerts that I thought I could take one of them to. I have taken all of my children together to only one show. It was an immigrant Christmas show about 5 years ago. In bulks of three, when my fourth child was already born, I took three of them to a Boston show. It was an incredible experience. Styx was opening. And we also saw a show with Don Felder, the guitar player from the Eagles opening. I'm wrong. The one that I watched with Styx opening was much earlier in 2006, if I'm not wrong, or 2008. The dates elude me, which is a hard thing. I usually have a very good memory connecting dates to records, to albums, but more on that later. The point is that I've taken my children to some rock shows. I've taken my children to the only tribute that I thought I could take them, ABBA tributes. We've seen two bands paying tribute to the music of ABBA, and I used to think that a tribute would be only to the music of a band that didn't no longer exist. That a tribute would be some sort of an Elvis impersonator kind of situation where you have a tribute to Michael Jackson, a tribute to ABBA, maybe a tribute to Led Zeppelin, bands that are no longer around. And then I am sure that sometimes I saw the name tribute thrown in with bands that are either current or not playing as frequently, and I thought, but they're not even cover bands. I mean, a cover band is a band made up of musicians that are so good at what they do that they're paid to play the songs live, whether at weddings, corporate events, parties, city activities. But they're so good because they know at least a couple of hundred songs and they can play them on request right like that. That was to me a cover band. A cover band was something huge. A tribute band, they're so bad that they only play the songs of one band because they probably cannot learn others. And they're probably like adults who played for a few months when they were kids and then stopped playing and they just want to play now. And it costs only about $10. Must be bad. So I avoided tribute bands for a few shows, for a few years. I didn't even care to go, to even pay attention. I'll tell you more about a couple of opportunities that when I look back on my photo albums, I realized that I did go to a tribute show once. It was incredible, but it didn't register in my mind because I was blocking the idea of a tribute show. And if I can change the mind of one person listening to this who has not yet gone to a tribute show or has gone casually and focused more on the conversation and the eating and the drinking rather than on the music, I'm going to be very happy if I change that person's mind and make them think, I'm going to go to a tribute show. I'm going to go and celebrate the music and seek connection and hopefully build new friendships and new memories. That is what I pursue. That is what I want. If you were to ask me why am I doing this, I'm doing it this first and foremost to save my life. To save my life not as a end of life situation where there's any physical threat. No, to save my life from despair, from solitude, from sadness, from depression, and from the absence of good things. I want to share the love that I have for love music, and I want to commit my time not to ventures in my home country, not to schemes about a small business that has failed too many times, but to something that simply brings me joy for the sheer love of live music. That is what this podcast is about. Going back to the story that I was telling you about tribute bands, in 2020, I compiled that list. I still have it on a spreadsheet somewhere because I met with each of my kids. One of my daughters wanted to go to a Maroon 5 and a Zach Brown concert. One of my daughters wanted to go to an AC/DC concert. And there were a couple of other concerts that I thought that I could take my younger one to. And I thought that there were a couple of concerts that I could take all the family to. I believe a train concert. I don't remember the whole list. And there were, of course, several shows that I said, this is the year that I'm going to go to at least 10 concerts. And whether it's with my children or alone, I'm going to go to 10 concerts, but I wanted to bring them to some. Guess what happened? Yes, in March, the pandemic hit. So from that list, it went bust. There's not a single concert that we went to. I had already taken my kids to the most wonderful live experience that I've had, which is a Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert. That, funnily enough, the music of Trans-Siberian Orchestra is deeply connected to the business venture I wanted to start in my country. But we've enjoyed those concerts so much that I know that bringing children to a concert can be amazing. I remember my father taking me to two concerts, and both were by bands from Spain. One was the band Mecano, which is a techno pop kind of band, and the other one was called Hombres G. I'm going to tell you more about those later. It's hard to continue speaking about my father without going into this mode of a nostalgic mood. And while that is okay, I embrace all emotions that are part of the human experience. I enjoy being sad. I normally tell people if a movie does not make me cry, was not worth watching. Whether it could be a comedy or an action film, there has to be some dramatic moments where the soul of mine connects to the story and weeps. Whether it's weeps with tears of joy, tears of relief, tears of sadness, tears of compassion for the story there, or maybe tears of reflecting upon my own experiences and letting those eyes do what they do, which is shed some tears. That's okay with me. I love connecting with emotions. I love songs that make me cry. I love songs that make me scream. I love songs that make me jump. And I do love songs that make me dance, even though I'm a failure at dancing. There's many things in my life that I can admit that I'm a failure to. Dancing is one of them. Playing bass is another. Singing, of course, I never even tried, so I cannot say that I've failed. And yes, I failed as a small business owner. I've also failed in the ideas that I had where I would be when I was 20, when I was 30, when I was 40. I'm 47 years old now, and I can tell you that I've even failed at marriage. I've been divorced twice, and I'm so open about it because it's part of my story. One of the most freeing moments that I've experienced in this year of 2022 was when my wife and I sat our children after 2 years of thinking it through and discussing this scenario, and we said, it's time. They're old enough, at least the three older ones are. The fourth one, a 6 year old, was not in that conversation, but we always wonder, when is the right moment to tell them? Your father was married before, two times. Funnily enough, the conversation went very well. They were not shocked, they were surprised a little bit, but the first thing they said is, how does that change anything? It doesn't. I didn't have children with any of those women that I was married to, so it doesn't change the situation in any way. The only thing that I remember funnily about that conversation is when, after I told him the story of my first marriage, which was in my country, to a woman from my country, who is a woman that I adore and I love and that I respect so much and wish her nothing but the best, who has been a friend and even a person that I've worked with in the last few years, I told them the story. And then I said, well, then let me tell you something else. It happened again. I got married again, a second time. And it also obviously failed and ended in divorce. When I said I got married again, that's when I remember my daughter going, she couldn't believe it. I take pride in the fact that I told them. I'm incredibly happy about that. I try to share as much as I can with their young minds, respecting where they are, respecting where a 13-year-old boy, a 12-year-old girl, and a 10-year-old girl, their thoughts and their hearts can be. But I also try to be very honest. We try to share as much as we can, not only music, but difficult situations about the way the world is going, about the way our family may be going at times, about the way of many things. I believe that is my joy and my duty. And that's why I believe that among all the things in life where I have failed, there's one where I don't believe I have failed, but even if I do fail at times, I will not accept defeat. And that is in the journey of being a father. Above anything, I owe it to life, I owe it to the world, I owe it to myself, but mostly I owe it to them. I owe it to them to be a father that is present and that is always thinking about them. This is also why I'm doing this podcast. They need a father who is mentally healthy, mentally stable. They need a father who can throw all his energy into a creative endeavor and get joy out of something he likes doing. I have two children, my two boys, they want to be YouTubers. It's hard for me to say that they want to be that. I'd rather have them be musicians, but they're at a stage there. Yeah, different stages. One wants to be a YouTuber focused on gaming, the other one wants to be a YouTuber focused on game reviews. They want to be YouTubers. So they love when they see me recording. When I bought that little round light that I'm using here, and when they see me get microphones that I'm using for the podcast, and when they have seen me recordings, they walk into this area where I record and they see that I'm talking, they are like so excited. Their father is doing a podcast. And that makes them happy. And that makes me happy. I'm making this podcast for them. I'm making this podcast because I have absolutely no guarantee if I might die today. Think about it. We don't have that guarantee. I hope I don't. I hope that I got at least 35 more years to live. But if I die today, I want him to be able to revisit these recordings and hear my voice and know who I was, the things that matter to me. I speak to them mostly in English all the time, so they would completely flow through this conversation and feel they're hearing me. And if I don't die, I want to use this to become a healthier person, a person who is happier about himself, who is happy about what he's doing in the world around him. And I want this to be an opportunity for me to leave a legacy, something that makes them proud. Because even though I might have failed, I will never consider myself a failure, and I will never accept defeat as a father. As I have done or attempted to set out this podcast and launch it on air over the last 6 weeks, there's many times that I have to stop recording my intro. There's many times that I have to change plans. I found a producer in Guatemala who's helping me with putting it all together, and there's times that we have agreed to meet and knock it all out and go over the editing of the interviews and put it on the servers so that you guys all can hear it. And guess what? Something happened with one of my kids. Change of plans. Everything goes away, and we have to wait another day, another week. I'm first and foremost a father. I'm a music lover. I'm a person who is passionate about the live music experience. Yes, I have my favorite genre of music, which is not necessarily rock, but heavy metal. And my favorite genre, my favorite decade, it's obviously the late 80s, but I also respect, I want to pay tribute to the tributes, and what they do is something that first I can never do. I can never play a single song. Hey, not even Smoke on the Water on guitar I can play for like 3 seconds. I've tried and I keep trying, and every time I grab an instrument, that's what I try to show off my kids with. But the thing is, I know that what the people in tribute bands are doing is something that brings me joy. It's something that has created wonderful memories for my family. It's something that continues to bring excitement to me. When I go over social media or when I go over my calendar and see concert events by tribute bands, I'm overjoyed with the possibility of bringing my children, of having a live music experience, of hearing the music of bands that I never seen live or that I might never see live because they no longer play, or seeing the music of bands that I have seen live at a stadium from 2 kilometers away. Well, not really 2 kilometers. I don't know what the distance is from the nosebleed section to the stage at AT&T Stadium, but that's where I've been. And you know what? It wasn't my best concert. It's probably one of the ones that disappointed me the most because the sound was terrible. But the point is, when I saw a tribute band playing the same music, I was blown away. That was actually the first tribute band I ever saw. The Joshua Tree, May at Gas Monkey, now called Amplified. Then I've seen some other shows. The last show that I went to at Lava Cantina with my wife, a tribute to Brian Adams, and then followed by the music of Heart. It was an unbelievable Valentine's Day experience that we haven't shared in a while. There's something so transformatory about that concert, particularly the song Heaven by Brian Adams. I wrote about it in a review that you might find online. I'm going to post a link here. But the music experience at tribute shows is changing me, has changed my life, is changing me, and will hopefully continue to change me. Now I want to give something back. I want to give something back to the tribute bands that are doing the hard work of rehearsing and putting together an amazing production and giving us the opportunity to enjoy live music. I am no musician, I am no journalist, and the only way I can do it is by using the power of my voice and the words in the English language, a language that I discovered through rock music. That's what I do this because I love live rocking and I want to live a life that rocks. I want to love and live rocking, and I absolutely love live rocking music. So that's the intro. That's my first episode. If you see me around at a show, please don't say hello. Of course, say hola. Okay? See you around. Thank you for listening, and hasta luego.